Last week, I worked on a comic Carnage figure, and that figure was awesome. I don't normally collect comic-based characters, but I highly recommend that one if you don't have it already. And today, I'm gonna work on the animated version of Carnage. I love the retro VHS tape packaging. Cute packaging will always get me. That said, the Carnage figure is far from cute. The promotional images were already pretty disappointing. And this is one of the few figures that actually look worse in person. This is just my opinion, but this orange-red never looks good on figures. Along with the seemingly random squiggles of black paint, this Carnage figure looks very cheaply made. It's such a downgrade from the other Carnage figure, especially when I'm working on this one right after. The only good thing is the Cletus Cassidy head, but it's not perfect either. Let's deconstruct this figure. There's an FAQ on the paint and brushes I use in the description box below. I believe this figure is based on Carnage from the animated series, but it's just so inaccurate. Where do I begin? First of all, it kinda looks like they gave up halfway with the black and didn't bother with it. The tendrils on the back are also unpainted, so the overall figure just looks unfinished. But to be fair, the design in the show isn't that consistent and often looks very simplified, but not to this degree. This just looks lazily done. The Carnage head is alright. It looks like Carnage in the comics, but I realized in the cartoon the eyes aren't jagged. They have more of a smooth outline. The Cletus Cassidy head has a great expression. I also like the paint job they did on the face. There's a bit of gradient paint around the eyes, but it doesn't match the cel-shaded cartoon look in my opinion. And speaking of not matching, the hairstyle doesn't match how he looked in the show as well. Boo. I don't love bashing figures. In most cases, I can tell efforts were made, and the reason why figures look inaccurate is because of budget, or they want to keep the amount of paint to 2 to 3 colors. This Carnage figure is just so disappointing in many ways. If it weren't for the cute packaging, I wouldn't have gotten it. But now that I have it, I feel like I have to see if I can make it look more like the Carnage I knew from the 90s cartoon. So, hello, this is Ken. I like making things. I like making things out of paper, and I like making things cooler. Especially my figures. Sometimes figures don't look all that screen accurate. All they need is a bit of touch-up here and there to unleash their hidden potential. I also love using everyday tools and materials to recreate iconic scenes for my figures, so they can shine on my display. Subscribe to my channel and join my DIY adventure as I ask myself the same question every week. Can I make it? First, I gotta remove all the black paint on the figure. Normally, I just paint over the figure to adjust the shade or tone and work on what's already there. But the black paint here is so unappealing. I would much rather have a fresh, clean base to work on. I've never stripped paint before, but I remember seeing comments about using acetone to do it. And it's much easier than I thought. Except, I have to be speedy. The acetone evaporates quickly and any leftover paint will remain on the plastic, leaving behind a stained, smudged look. And I also remember seeing comments about acetone eating the plastic if I use too much. So I'm a bit worried about that too. Okay, I'm running out of patience. Q-tips are too slow. I'm gonna go for it. I'm gonna soak the paper towel instead and wipe off as much paint as possible. I don't know if this is the right way, but it seems more efficient. I'm still not able to reach the tiny crevices, but it's fine, I'll figure out something later. I just want to focus on getting the majority of the black paint off first. Alright, this is what the figure looks like with most of the black paint stripped. I can tell the acetone is starting to eat certain areas of the plastic, so I gotta stop. Let me paint over the entire figure with the red. This will hopefully cover up some of the black and get rid of that plastic sheen. Like I mentioned last week, I generally don't do cartoon or comic characters because they are usually meant to be seen in 2D, and they don't always translate well in figure form. Figures often have this plastic shine on them, giving them white highlights that make them look three-dimensional. Acrylic paint dries down matte, so this should flatten the color. Like this. But before I work on the black details, I want to seal the red paint. I'm gonna add a thin coat of matte varnish over the red. This will add a layer of protection or barrier between the red and the black. So when I do make mistakes later with the black, I don't have to worry too much about messing up the red paint. The only minor issue with the matte varnish is that it's not completely matte. There's a tiny bit of rubbery shine to it. So let me dust another thin coat of red over it to mattify it a bit more. It's probably easier and more efficient with spray paint or airbrush. But because I always work late at night in a room with no ventilation, I have to do it with acrylic paint instead. Alright, now the base figure is ready. Time to add the black details back in. I'm gonna sketch in some thin lines first to figure out the overall design. And once I'm happy with the design, I'll thicken and refine the lines. According to the varying reference images, there seems to be a couple of thin lines that go across the entire chest. Oops, I made a mistake. Good thing I did the varnish, so I can use a wet brush to clean up any messes without worrying about ruining the undercoat. Continuing on, the black keeps going down and around the abs, and it gets much thicker here. I'm gonna place the paint next to the seams to help conceal them. As for the crotch area, I think it's supposed to be all black. I couldn't find that many reference images, so I'm just gonna go with what's on the box art. Alright, now let me work on the rest of the details on the torso. The black seems to go all the way to the sides, and there are these lines that connect back to the abs. These lines also seem to be thicker as well. Hey, that looks promising. Let me do the same on the other side. I'm going to replicate what I did, and I'm also going to thicken the lines. Here's what the torso looks like. I'm not so certain anymore. Did I add too much black? It's too late now. Gotta keep going. Onto the neck. The black extends all the way up the neck, and kinda has this upside down triangle right in the middle. And then there are these smaller triangular shapes on the sides. I'm just gonna follow my gut feeling and add whatever feels right. Ooh, not bad. I'm starting to see it now. Yay! Onto the arms. For the shoulders, I'm gonna paint around the joints. I'm also trying to avoid painting areas that make contact with other body parts. That way I can minimize paint rub. As for the arms, I'm gonna do those curvy hooks, similar to the ones on the Venom figure. The tendrils are kinda in the way, making it quite difficult, so I'm gonna do it off screen. Ta-da! I love the arms. They're just the right amount of strokes where it doesn't look too busy or too bare. Okay, for the hands, I'm gonna paint the inside and underside black. I don't know if this will look right, but this should give the hands more depth. Kinda like shadows. Just a little bit of black on the back of the hand. And done. Ooh, I love the hands. Good job, Ken. All there's left are the legs. I'm gonna start by extending the black down the hip joints, so it doesn't look like he's wearing a black underwear. Let me redo the areas that have the leftover black paint, creating shapes that kind of follow the muscle definition. I'm also gonna make sure these shapes aren't symmetrical, to create more of an organic look to it, like the symbiote is alive and moving. Ah, the legs look good. Oh, I forgot about the back. The original paintwork wasn't that far off, but it was giving... So I'm gonna redo it. First, a straight line down the middle. Then I'm gonna add some thin horizontal lines to kind of space them out first. I think the triangles were too close to each other before. That's why it looked weird. I'm going for more of a spine look. Okay, this is what I've done. It looks a little bit like a tiger. Oh well. The body is pretty much done. I also worked on the accessories off screen. Not much, just mattifying the red and adding little bits of black here and there, and doing the same thing to the other hand. On to the face. On its own, I think this is a decent Carnage face, but it is very shiny. Let me mattify the red first. While I'm at it, I'm also going to make the tongue a bit less salmon and more pink. It's a little hard to reach in there. And finally, the black. Carnage always has a flat black face, so I gotta mattify the black as well. And last but not least, the eyes. I'm gonna reshape the eyes by painting over the white jagged areas to make the overall eye shape more smooth. Luckily, the area around the eyes are black, so the bumpy texture isn't gonna be too noticeable. I just have to make sure my lines are as crisp as possible. Okay, I'm gonna do it off camera for better precision. But before I show you the final result, here's Cletus Cassidy's head. I like this head on its own, but the subtle paint job makes it look more like a comic head than a cartoon head. Cartoon faces are generally very 2D and flat, with no gradient or softness. So I gotta flatten the skin tone, especially the area around the eyes. This feels wrong, but it should be fine because the sculpt is already so three-dimensional. I'm gonna cover up the lips as well. Cletus doesn't really have lips in the cartoon. My goal here is to make the face look more 2D and cartoonish. Okay, here's the face with no lips and no eye bags. Time to add the cel shading to complete the cartoonish look. I'm not that experienced when it comes to cel shading. The Venom and Symbiote Spider-Man were just squiggly lines. Miles Morales was more of a CGI cel shaded look. And Spider-Man 2099 was kinda my first real attempt at cel shading. For this face, I'm gonna add this orange-ish tan color to one side of his face, filling in areas that are sunken in and avoiding areas that stick out. I hope this works. Cel shading is hard, but this is also the perfect head to try it, because I'm likely never gonna use this head, since I prefer the Carnage head more. So if I do mess up, it's not gonna hurt too much. The only way I can learn is by testing it out. It's not bad, but I'm not satisfied. I need a bit more. Let me add a little bit of shading right above the chin and under the nose, kinda like how it is here. I added a bit more shading on the side of the nose and a little bit above the lips. It's starting to look right. I just need to add a few more strokes on the other side to complete the look. Okay, I'm happy with this. Now the teeth are bothering me. I appreciate the texture they gave the teeth, but it's not very cartoon-like, so I'm gonna clean it up a bit. I'm gonna stop touching the face. Let me finish it by mattifying the hair. I don't want that plastic sheen on it. The same goes for the eyebrows. And finally, the highlights. I don't know how to do cel-shaded hair yet, so I'm just gonna paint this side of the hair a lighter shade and hope for the best, and seal everything with the matte varnish. Alright, here's the finished Cletus Cassidy head. Ooh, I like what I've done. For my very first attempt at cel shading on a human face, I think I did a decent job. The face looks flatter, but the intensity is still there. The hair could be better though, but it is fine. It's not that screen accurate to begin with. And here's the finished Carnage head. It's kinda crazy how different it looks just by changing the eyes. I also added a thin coat of matte varnish to mattify the head and add a bit of protection. Here's Carnage all finished. At a glance, the before and after looks similar, but the deeper red, the matte texture makes this figure look so much more high-end. And there's just enough black paint where it no longer looks like it's out of budget. Let's take a closer look. I love the new eyes. I think I captured how he looked in the cartoon quite well. I wonder why they gave him those jagged eyes in the first place. Actually, I think I know why. Carnage did have eyes like that for like one scene, and they changed them to the cleaner look after that. Here's Carnage with Cletus Cassidy's head. This combination is still not that impressive, but I'm still glad they provided an extra head. Look how ugly the original back looks. Oh, and the painted hand looks so much more defined. And here's a closer look. The before just looks so cheap and jarring. Stylistically, the head just doesn't match the body. The painted head works a bit better in my opinion. Alright, here's cartoon Carnage with comic Carnage. Overall, the comic version is still 200 times better. Get that figure if you haven't already. But I have to say, I don't dislike the cartoon one anymore. It now looks somewhat decent. Here's Carnage with Symbiote Spider-Man. This is actually my custom one from a while back. I really like what I've done. It's minimal and I think it's still better than what Hasbro did with the 2-pack. I haven't taken that one out of the packaging yet. I didn't want to feel disappointed twice. Alright, time to bring in the Symbiote family. Here's Venom. I cleaned up most of the squiggly lines and reshaped the eyes a bit. And here's Symbiote Spider-Man again. These three look amazing together. I hope they release Spider Carnage soon. That is probably the Spider-Man figure I've been wanting forever. Overall, I would not recommend this 2-pack if you don't plan on customizing it. The figure not only looks cheap, but it also feels cheaper than normal too. Like it's made out of mostly soft plastic. But if you do on customizing it, it does have potential. Otherwise, I don't think they put enough effort into this Carnage figure. But that allowed me to try 2 new things today. Using acetone to strip paint and testing out cel shading on human faces. Not too bad for my first time. Acetone still scares me though. I can kinda see that the torso looks a bit stained, but it doesn't really bother me too much. What do you think? Do you like what I've done? Let me know down below. I'm quite happy with the black design I did. I was worried that I wouldn't be able to capture the animated style, since there were limited references. But I think it looks pretty decent. And best of all, it matches the squiggly aesthetic on the Venom and Symbiote Spider-Man figures. These three look perfect together. This figure doesn't look that bad next to the other Carnage figure too. I like that they both look like Carnage but with different distinctive styles. Alright, let's end this with a photo shoot. I know this is a subpar figure, but I'm starting to dig this design. It has this exaggerated slender look. He is bulkier in the show, but the slender look does give him more character, especially with the weapon and the tendrils. The Cletus Cassidy face still looks a little odd on the body. Maybe it will look nicer if the symbiote is running up his face. I do like the sinister expression though. They capture the Carnage vibe quite well. Alright, I hope you enjoyed today's video. This turned out much better than I expected. I don't know if I'll work on the Symbiote Spider-Man from this 2-pack. I still really like the one I've done. I'll work on it if I can figure out a new way to make it look even better. But until then, stay inspired and I'll see you next week. I can make it, so can you.